Los Angeles, California, Gold's Gym, Venice Beach, July 9th, 1971. Friday afternoon, 2:45 p.m. The gym smells like iron and chalk, and the particular kind of sweat that belongs to people who have been doing the same thing in the same building for years, until the building itself has absorbed their effort into its walls. Weight plates line the racks in ascending order. The ceiling is low and industrial. Fans mounted near the top of the walls push air around without cooling anything. The floor is rubber matting over concrete, and it carries the scent of 10,000 sessions pressed into it like a record of everyone who ever stood there and decided to become something different than what they were. Gold's Gym in Venice Beach in 1971 is not yet the institution it will become. It is not yet the place that bodybuilding mythology will eventually locate at the center of its own origin story. It is simply the best-equipped, serious lifting facility on the West Coast. The place where the people who are genuinely committed to the physical development of the human body gather because nowhere else in driving distance has what this place has. And on this particular Friday afternoon in July, it has 61 people inside it, which is more than usual for a weekday afternoon. And the reason it has more than usual is a reason that not everyone in the room would feel comfortable stating out loud, but that everyone in the room understands. Bruce Lee is here. He comes to Gold's occasionally. Not as a regular, not as someone who needs what a bodybuilding gym provides in the way that the bodybuilders who treat this place as their second home need it. He comes because the equipment is serious and the space is large enough for the specific conditioning work he cannot do adequately in smaller facilities, because the weights are heavy enough and the cables strong enough and the machines robust enough to survive what he asks of them, which is more than most of the people who use them ask. He arrived 40 minutes ago with no announcement and settled into his training with the self-contained focus that characterizes everything he does physically. He has been moving through a conditioning circuit that bears no resemblance to anything else happening in the gym. Not bodybuilding, not powerlifting, not any recognizable fitness methodology that any of the 61 people currently watching him out of the corners of their eyes can name with confidence. It is something that belongs entirely to him. Something built from the accumulated understanding of a man who has spent his entire adult life studying what the human body is capable of producing when it is trained with complete intentionality toward a specific purpose. The purpose is not size. The purpose is not the kind of aesthetic mass that the regulars at Gold's are pursuing with their measured meals and their precise split routines and their constant evaluation of themselves in the mirrors that line 3 walls of the facility. The purpose is something that does not photograph the same way, and does not measure the same way, and does not announce itself in the language that this particular room has built its entire culture around. The purpose is what a body can do, not what a body can look like. Most of the people in the room this afternoon understand this distinction, at least intellectually, and several of them have been training long enough and seriously enough to understand it in their bodies as well. They watch Bruce move through his circuit with the professional interest of people who recognize genuine physical development, even when it does not look like the development they have dedicated themselves to producing. Most of them, Raymond Kowalski has been training at Gold's for 4 years, and in those 4 years he has built himself into something that the gym's community regards as one of its more impressive physical specimens, which is not a small thing in a room where impressive physical specimens are the baseline. He stands 6 feet 2 inches tall and carries 265 pounds of muscle that he has constructed with the methodical dedication of someone who has made the accumulation and display of physical mass the organizing principle of his life. His arms are the size of other people's legs. His chest creates its own geography. When he walks through the gym, the weight of him registers in the floor. He is 26 years old, and he has never lost a confrontation in his life. Not a physical one, not a social one. He has the specific confidence of a man whose size has always resolved every situation before it could escalate to the point where any quality other than size was required. And this has given him a view of the world that is organized around a simple hierarchy. Large is superior to small. Strength is superior to quickness. Mass is the answer to every question the physical world poses. He has been watching Bruce Lee train for 20 minutes, and his assessment has been taking shape in the loud, certain way that assessments take shape in men who have never had their assessments seriously challenged. He is small, Kowalski says to the two training partners flanking him, his voice not lowered in any meaningful way. The gym is noisy enough that the comment does not carry to every corner of the room, but it carries to the corners nearest him, which is enough corners to matter. He is small, and he is doing circus tricks. What is that even supposed to be? He gestured toward Bruce's current exercise with the contempt that people reserve for things they have decided not to understand. That is not training. That is dancing. One of his training partners, a man named Garrett, who has been at Gold's almost as long as Kowalski and who carries enough experience to recognize what he is actually watching, says nothing. He watches Bruce move through the cable rotation sequence with the close attention of someone filing information away. The other training partner laughs on cue. This is his function in the group. Kowalski is warming up now. He loads a barbell with a weight that would be exceptional in most gyms and is solidly impressive even in this one. And he begins his set with the grunting focused effort of a man who understands that the production of effort is itself a kind of performance, that in a room like this one, the sounds and physical expressions of serious training carry social weight alongside the actual training weight. He finishes the set and racks the bar and turns back toward the area where Bruce is working. Bruce has moved to the heavy bag. He is striking it with a sequence that looks, to the uninformed eye, like a series of relatively light taps, nothing like the full extension committed power punches that the boxers who occasionally train at Gold's throw when they work the bag. The bag is moving more than it should be moving, given what the strikes appear to produce. Several people near the bag have noticed this discrepancy and have positioned themselves at angles that allow closer observation. Kowalski has not noticed the discrepancy. He has noticed only the surface. He says something then that crosses a line that the first comment had not crossed. He says it at a volume that is not accidental. He uses language built around Bruce's ethnicity that frames what he is watching as inherently lesser, inherently foreign, inherently belonging to a category of physical practice that a man like Kowalski, by virtue of being the kind of man Kowalski is, does not need to take seriously. The words land in the room the way that kind of words always lands. They produce a particular silence around the person who said them while simultaneously producing a particular attention toward the person they were said about. Several people who were doing their own training stop doing it. Not dramatically, just stop and wait, because rooms that contain serious people doing serious physical work have a collective intelligence that operates faster than any individual in them. And the collective intelligence of this room in this moment knows that something has entered it that was not there before. Bruce Lee stops hitting the bag. He turns around. This is the first time in 40 minutes that he has directed his attention toward anything other than his own training. He has been aware of Kowalski since Kowalski started talking. He is aware of everything in any room he is in. This is not a skill separate from his martial arts training. It is the same skill expressed through a different sense. The quality of attention that makes him extraordinary on a mat or in a ring is the same quality of attention that has been tracking the escalating situation behind him for the last several minutes with complete accuracy. He looks at Kowalski. The look is not aggressive. It does not contain the heat of anger in any form that Kowalski, who has experience reading the signals of impending physical confrontation, would recognize as heat of anger. It is simply a look, direct and complete and utterly without performance. The look of a man who has decided that something requires his attention and is now giving it that attention with the same quality he gives everything. Kowalski meets the look. He does not look away. He is 265 pounds and 4 years of Gold's Gym, and he does not look away from a man who weighs 140 pounds regardless of how that man is looking at him. He laughs. The sound is not quite right. Something in the acoustics of it tells the room's collective intelligence that the laugh is doing work the situation hasn't earned for it yet. "You going to show me something, little man?" Kowalski says. He gestures at the bag. "You going to demonstrate your little techniques for me?" He steps forward, not aggressively, not with the body language of someone who has decided to initiate physical contact. With the body language of someone who is using his size the way he has always used his size, to establish the geometry of the situation in his favor before anything else happens, to make his physical presence in the space the primary fact in the room. He stops 6 feet from Bruce. The height and weight differential is frankly absurd at this distance. Kowalski creates his own local weather system. Standing next to Bruce, he looks like a different category of organism, something that evolved under different physical laws. Several people have fully stopped their workouts now. The gym's ambient noise has dropped. The fans push air through a room that is paying attention. Bruce looks at him for a moment without speaking. Then he says calmly and without any particular emphasis, "You are welcome to hit me, if you can." The room processes this. Kowalski processes this. What he hears, filtered through 4 years of Gold's Gym and 265 pounds of mass and a lifetime of situations resolved in his favor by sheer physical fact, is an invitation that his entire history has prepared him to accept with confidence. He is looking at a 140-pound man who has just invited him to demonstrate something that Kowalski has spent his entire adult life developing: force, power, the specific physical quality that mass and training and years of progressive overload produce in a human body. He draws his right hand back. Not subtly, Kowalski hits the way everything else about Kowalski operates, with full commitment, with the absolute investment of everything he has in the direction he has chosen. He generates force the way a large body generates force, from the shoulder through the arm, committed and linear and carrying the full weight of everything behind it. The problem is that everything behind it is also the problem. Committed force has a shape. Linear committed force from a large body has a very specific shape. It has an origin point and a destination point, and between those 2 points, it travels a path that is not a secret. It announces itself. It exists in space for long enough to be read by someone who knows how to read it. Not long enough for an ordinary person to do anything with that reading. Long enough for Bruce Lee. Bruce's right hand rises not to block. Blocking is the response of a system that opposes incoming force with outgoing force and hopes that the outgoing force is sufficient. What Bruce's hand does is something technically different and experientially incomprehensible to anyone watching it for the first time at the speed it occurs. He meets Kowalski's strike at a point along its path and redirects a fraction of it, just enough, with a precision that requires understanding not just of where the force is going, but of the exact mechanical consequence of altering its trajectory by a specific small degree at a specific moment in its travel. Kowalski's fist goes past Bruce, not far past, just past. The margin is small enough that people standing nearby will later disagree about whether contact was made or not. But Kowalski's body follows his fist. This is the part that his training did not prepare him for. His training prepared him to hit things that were where he aimed them. His training did not prepare him for the specific biomechanical consequence of throwing 265 pounds of committed mass at a target that is no longer precisely where it was when the commitment was made. He is off balance. Not dramatically. The degrees involved are small, but small degrees of imbalance in a body that is fully committed to a direction of travel produce outcomes that are disproportionate to the size of the initial error. Bruce's left hand moves. What it does takes less than 5 seconds from the moment Kowalski threw the punch to the moment that Kowalski runs out of breath. It is not a single strike. It is a sequence executed at a speed that the room's 61 people will disagree about in their individual accounts for years afterward, because the sequence moves faster than individual observation can accurately segment it into its component parts. People will say 2 strikes. People will say 3. People will say they saw something happen to Kowalski's midsection at a point that is not where you would expect a strike to land if your understanding of striking comes from boxing or powerlifting or any of the disciplines represented in this room. What everyone agrees on is the outcome. Kowalski's diaphragm stops working, not because he has been hit in the way that the room expected him to be hit, not with the kind of power shot that a smaller fighter might attempt against a larger one and hope that adrenaline and fury compensate for the physics. He has been hit precisely in the specific location where a precisely delivered force produces a specific neurological response that the human body has no voluntary override for. The diaphragm is not a muscle that responds to willpower when its nerve supply has been correctly interrupted. It simply stops. And when it stops, breathing stops with it. Kowalski stands. He does not go down. He remains on his feet. But he is bent forward, and his hands are on his knees, and his mouth is open, and the sound coming out of it is the specific sound of a body trying to perform a function that its nervous system has temporarily made unavailable. He cannot breathe. He is fully conscious. His mind is working. He knows exactly where he is, and what just happened, and who is standing in front of him. He knows all of this with complete clarity. His body simply will not respond to what he is telling it to do. 5 seconds. 5 seconds from the moment Bruce moved to the moment Kowalski is bent over his own knees, unable to draw a breath. The gym is silent in a way that Gold's Gym is almost never silent. The fans push air through a room that has forgotten how to make noise. Bruce stands where he stood. His hands are at his sides. His breathing is as controlled as it was during his training circuit. He is looking at Kowalski with an expression that contains neither satisfaction nor contempt. It contains something that most people in the room, once they have processed what they are seeing, will identify as patience. He is simply waiting, giving the situation time to complete itself. Garrett, Kowalski's training partner, the one who said nothing when the comments started, stands a few feet away looking at his training partner with an expression that mixes concern and something else. Something that resembles the particular discomfort of a person who watched a situation arrive at exactly the destination they privately suspected it was heading toward. The other training partner, the one whose function is to laugh on cue, is not laughing. Kowalski straightens up slowly. The diaphragm is releasing. Breath is returning, painful and ragged, each inhale arriving like a negotiation. He puts his hands on top of his head the way people do when they are trying to maximize the mechanical advantage available to compromised breathing. He pulls air in. He lets it out. He pulls more in. He looks at Bruce. His face has undergone a significant rearrangement. The specific quality of confidence that walked into the space between them 6 feet from the heavy bag has left it. What has replaced it is something that will take him longer to name than the 5 seconds it took to put it there. It is the expression of a man encountering the first clear evidence in his adult life that the map he has been using to navigate the physical world is missing a substantial portion of the territory. He opens his mouth. For a moment, nothing comes out. He closes it. He takes another breath. He tries again. How? He says. The word is not a challenge. It is a genuine question. The only genuine question he has asked in this entire encounter. How does a man your size do that to a man my size? Bruce looks at him for a moment. When he speaks, his voice is even and unhurried and contains nothing that could be identified as triumph. Size determines how much force a body can produce, Bruce says. It does not determine where that force is vulnerable. Every body, regardless of how much it weighs or how it was trained, has the same nervous system, the same nerve clusters, the same points where a correctly applied force produces a response that the body cannot override through will or conditioning or mass. You have built an extraordinary amount of strength, but strength is only the answer to a specific category of question. I did not ask you that question. Kowalski says nothing. He is still breathing carefully, managing the air coming in and out with the focused attention of a man who has recently been reminded that breathing is not automatic. The people around them have resumed their training, not all at once, in ones and twos, returning to their bars and their cables and their machines with the particular thoughtfulness of people who have just witnessed something that has lodged itself in a location that their regular thinking does not have easy access to. Something that will surface at odd moments for years afterward, on the drive home in the middle of a set just before sleep, presenting itself again for another attempt at being understood. Garrett approaches Bruce. He is a big man, not Kowalski's size, but substantial, with the careful movement of someone who trains seriously and thinks carefully about what training means. He extends his hand. I want to apologize for what was said, Garrett says. That was not something I was part of, and it was not something I agree with. Bruce shakes his hand. He nods once. Then he turns back toward the heavy bag. He resumes training exactly where he left off. The same circuit, the same quality of focused self-contained attention. as though the last 15 minutes were a brief administrative interruption in a schedule that had not fundamentally changed. Kowalski does not train for the rest of the afternoon. He sits on a bench near the water fountain, and he breathes, and he thinks. What he is thinking is not something he shares with anyone in the gym. He will share pieces of it over the following weeks with Garrett, in the private way that people share things that have altered their understanding of something they thought they had figured out. What he says to Garrett is this: "I have been hit before. I have been hit hard. I know what it feels like when a large man decides to hit you with everything he has. What happened today was not that. It was something I do not have words for yet. He did not use effort. I did not see preparation. I felt nothing that I would call a strike. And then I could not breathe for the longest 30 seconds of my life." He pauses. "I said things today that I should not have said, about his background, about who he is. I said them because I was looking at his size, and I stopped looking after that. His size was the last relevant thing in that room, and I made it the only thing." Garrett listens. "That is going to take me a while to work out," Kowalski says. "What happened at Gold's Gym on July 9, 1971, does not make newspapers. It is not documented in any official record. Bruce Lee never speaks about it publicly. He never references it in interviews or in the writings and notes that his students will eventually compile into the record of his philosophy. It was a Friday afternoon in a gym, and then it was over and he went home. But 61 people were in that gym, and 61 people carried it out of the building the way people carry things that genuinely happened to them, not as a story they are telling, but as a piece of information that has changed the shape of something they thought they understood. Some of them told it carefully, in the specific technical language of people who train, focusing on the mechanics, on what Bruce's hand did, and where it made contact, and what neurological principle explains the outcome, the way practitioners talk about things they need to understand rather than simply experience. Some of them told it the way people tell the things they witness that they cannot fully explain, preserving the atmosphere of it, the silence that fell over the gym, the fans pushing air through a room that had gone still, the sound of a 265-pound man trying to remember how to breathe. And some of them told it as a story about something else entirely, about a man who walked into a room where someone decided to look only at his size and stopped looking after that, about what happened 5 seconds after that decision was made, about the specific and inarguable education that those 5 seconds delivered to everyone in the room, not just to the man who was bent over his knees at the end of them, about the fact that Bruce Lee finished his training session, that he resumed at the exact point of interruption, and continued without drama or acknowledgement, because the work was the point, and the work had not changed, and nothing that happened between the heavy bag and the water fountain altered what the work was or why it mattered. He was there to train. He trained. Everything else was 5 seconds. Everything else was already over.